Record is right there. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for joining us. This is Democrats Abroad, Greece's virtual discussion space, launched in spring of 2021. We feature speakers and discussion of issues important to American voters abroad. And this fall, we are highlighting the work of some of the Democrats Abroad global task forces. Like our work for Democrats Abroad Greece, their work on behalf of Americans residing abroad is carried out on a volunteer basis. But don't let this fool you. The DA Global Task Forces are led by experts in their field, and they are dedicated to researching our specific concerns, highlighting solutions, and supporting legislation that would enact reforms to our advantage. So this evening's presentation is the second in this series, and we will be hearing from the Taxation Task Force. So before I hand over to our member-at-large, Gina Billy, who will be introducing our speaker and moderating tonight's discussion, we invite you to tap in the chat box the state, your name, the state that you vote in, and how you heard about us. I think everybody's caught up on that. Great. Gina?
Thank you so much, Sarah Jane, and thanks to everybody for being here tonight. It's a real pleasure to have Rebecca joining us, and I'm going to introduce her in just a moment. I think everybody's finished typing in their info in the chat, so I'm going to ask you to please, please, please keep your fingers away from the chat while Rebecca is speaking, because that way none of us will get distracted writing and reading, and we can listen to her expertise. If you have a question and you think of it, my suggestion and what I do is get a piece of paper and do it the old-fashioned way. Write it down if you're afraid you're going to forget. And then I'll invite you later to type it into the chat when Rebecca is finished. Okay? Good. I need to remind you all that we're not here tonight. Before I tell you who Rebecca is, I'll tell you who she isn't. She is not a tax advisor or a lawyer or somebody who can sit down with us and explain to me all the things I've done wrong with the IRS over the years. And she'll be giving her own disclaimer, which actually I think she wanted me to do, and I've already forgotten it. So Rebecca, when you get to your presentation, I'll read out the disclaimer when you have it up on the screen, okay? Sorry, I've already messed up. So let me tell you about a little bit about Rebecca. She is from Ohio and votes in Ohio, and is someone who immigrated sort of first off just to study to London about 17 years ago. But Rebecca's plans, like many of us who have moved abroad, changed because London didn't only have studies for her. She got work offers and she found a British husband, or he found her. That I don't know. But that meant she also became an expat, and all that includes, including the obligation, which we all love, of filing our tax returns every year. Now, Rebecca is one of the Democrats abroad who fulfilled her obligation, or at least tried to, but then she suddenly ran into problems with navigating the whole IRS and trying to file her tax returns as a US citizen abroad. And one of the things I love about Rebecca's story is she didn't just like throw up her hands or pull out her hair. She got busy figuring things out and working, not just to solve her own tax issues, but to work for all of us. And meanwhile, since 2022, she has been leading the Democrats Abroad Taxation Task Force and has grown that group from 17 volunteers up to 70 in that time. And she is also the international representative or member on the Taxpayer Advocacy Panel, or TAP. TAP is a federal advisory committee. Its mission is to listen to taxpayers and identify our issues, make suggestions for improving IRS service and customer satisfaction. So now I'm going to be quiet because I'm really looking forward to what Rebecca has to share with us. And I know that all of you are too. What I'd ask you to do is just quickly turn on your microphones, please. Turn them on. Mic's on. And let's welcome Rebecca warmly so that she can hear us. Rebecca, welcome.
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 Thank you. Thank you so much.
welcome.
Thank you all.
You're welcome.
It's really nice to be here. Thank you for the nice intro, Gina, and thank you, Sarah Jane, for both of you for putting this on, and also the board and everyone that was involved. So yeah, I think we're a small group, so I mean, I'm kind of happy for people to interrupt me if they want to be honest. So
Okay.
but what I'll do is I've prepared some slides that will just kind of guide some info that I put together for this, and then it should only go for about 20 minutes, and then we can go into like open questions or conversation or however you guys want to do this. Does that sound okay? Yeah?
Lovely. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Can you see it?
Mhm.
Okay, great. So this is the disclaimer that Gina mentioned. So this is just to say Democrats Abroad can't provide advice. This isn't an advice session. We're not tax lawyers or accountants, so and we're not endorsing any particular companies or anything like that. So this session is really about to talk about our tax advocacy work. So we're not gonna go in that direction, but I thought I would just start out by telling you guys a little bit about me. I think it was great to hear Gina share my bio, but I basically had been volunteering for Democrats Abroad since 2017. Basically, I'd been living abroad, living, working, doing whatever I normally did, and then Trump happened in 2016, and I was just kind of like, well, I don't know who's in charge, but they clearly don't know what they're doing, so I'm going to get involved to try to figure out what I can do. And so I started going to Democrats Abroad events, and I eventually ended up going to the Democrats Abroad UK Women's Caucus. They had like a summer drinks thing here in London, and it was a big group. It was at least 20 women that were there, and we went around the room, and everybody just kind of shared like who they were and what issues they really cared about. And we went around the room, and I said taxes, and like nobody else said taxes, and I was like, I thought that's what Democrats Abroad did. And then after that, the leader came up to me and was saying, oh, I know the people that are working on the tax issues, like, let me connect you. So I got introduced to the Taxation Task Force there, and then I basically joined as a member and was helping out with our advocacy work, and continue until I became the chair in 2022. And so it's been a real pleasure to not only serve the organization, but also serve Americans abroad at large in this work that is not easy. It is really not easy. But I came into this, I'm not an accountant, I don't have a tax background. I just got angry about my tax situation, and so basically what happened was I had been filing every year because I had federal student loans, and I think it was 2008, 2009 when Obama changed the way that the payments were made, and they were then fixed based on your income, or you could apply, but it was based off of your adjusted gross income on your tax return that you filed every year. So I had to file in order to keep my student loan payments down. And so I had been filing like a good person does, and I started my own business in 2014, and around 2016 was when I started looking into it, and I realized that I wasn't filing it correctly. And then I called a bunch of accountants, and I could not get a straight answer in terms of how I was supposed to file. And it was really super frustrating. I was quoted like absolutely outrageously priced services and fees and things like that. And I was like, this is a joke. So anyway, that's where I was coming from. And I was like, look, there's something wrong here. What's wrong? And so I just kept digging into it. And I have a much better understanding. And through the group of volunteers that I recruited to join the team over the last 2 years, I'd say that we have made huge strides in progress compared to the previous years. That not to say that the work that was done before wasn't valuable and important, but I'm very good at line managing. I'm very good at I'm not a policy expert, although I've kind of become a subject matter expert because of the nature of the work, but my background is in project management and operations management, so I'm really good at forming teams, and I've been able to rely on and tap into volunteers who have subject matter expertise and have been able to build a team where we've been able to work together very well in order to really dig into it and try to make progress. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But in terms of the Taxation Task Force's work, basically what we do is we advocate for a switch to residency-based taxation, eliminating the FATCA reporting of foreign accounts for Americans abroad, exempting American business owners abroad from the GILTI and the transition taxes, and a whole swath of like lots of other things. But you can follow all of the stuff that we do on our blog on the Democrats Abroad website. And so what does the Taxation Task Force do? So basically, one of the biggest projects that we carried out in my first year last year was we conducted a survey of Americans abroad in terms of capturing their tax and financial access issues. It was then shared out to Democrats Abroad members, and we also encouraged people, any American abroad, to fill it in because it was an anonymous survey. We had almost 7,000 people respond, which is a pretty good sample size. And then we analyzed the results and we put together the report, which I'll share on one of my slides. So we conduct research because there's a severe lack of understanding and knowledge about Americans abroad. We're not counted in the US Census, so we don't actually know how many Americans abroad there are. The US State Department estimates that there are 9 million Americans living abroad. So that's kind of like, we're only going off of an estimate. It really helps to have concrete data when you're going and talking to congressional offices so that they can then figure out like how many people does this actually impact. Some of the other things that we do are we host tax education events. I've been working with even the country committee levels across Democrats Abroad to host tax education events. And now that I know Stacy is a fundraiser, I will be in touch with you on helping you set up a DA Greece tax education webinar next year. We also regularly submit statements for the record for congressional hearings. There's also open comment periods through various different US government organization departments that we submit formal comments for as well. We also do candidate outreach and education. So some of the best times to speak to members of Congress is actually before they're elected, so that they know what they're getting into, but also so that they're aware that they have constituents abroad, because that's one of the biggest barriers that we face, is that they don't even know that they have constituents living outside of their district or their state or the country even. We normally also do an annual visit to Washington, D.C. to talk to Congress and the different federal agencies to educate them and advocate on behalf of Americans abroad on our tax issues, and also raise awareness via the press of our issues as well. So Yeah, so this is the report that I talked about. It's called Once I'm Comfortable, Now Suffocating. And if you haven't read it, I really strongly advise that you do. It's a really great summary of all of the different problems that Americans abroad face in terms of their tax and financial access issues. So I get a lot of people saying, did you know that Americans abroad can't open a bank account? And I'm like, yes, you can read. It is a big problem. It is a systemic issue. So go read the report. It will help you better understand why you're facing that particular barrier, whether it's you can't open up a mortgage or, you know, things like that. It covers a lot of the topics. Just to kind of summarize some of our work this year in particular, we went to Washington, D.C. in June, and there were actually two door knocks. There was the general door knock, which was organized for all of the Democrats Abroad leaders who flew in for the Democrats Abroad annual general meeting. It was the first one that we did in person since COVID, so it was really exciting. And during the general door knock, we met with 89 different congressional offices, and there were 52 Democrats Abroad leaders from all over the world that attended those meetings. And the focus was on asking for co-sponsorship of the Commission on Americans Living Abroad Act, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. We then the following week did a dedicated tax door knock where we met with members of the Ways and Means Committee, and we were able to organize 39 meetings. We also, for the first time, organized what is called a congressional lunch and learn session. So basically, we organized a panel discussion with myself as well as a number of other American Abroad organizations to talk about the tax issues and educate congressional staff on the issues. And obviously, who doesn't love a free lunch, right? So congressional staff got a free lunch, and they also got educated on American Abroad tax issues. So it was a win-win in that respect. And then we also, on June 15th, we actually timed it because the expat tax filing deadline is June 15th. We also held a press conference on that day to raise awareness of our tax issues and to raise awareness with the press on the Commission on Americans Living Abroad Act. And we got a lot of press coverage on that as well. So here's some pictures so that you can see what it's like. I think somebody has unmuted
I'm online
themselves,
now
so
with
if they could
this
mute
taxation.
themselves, that would be really great. Yeah, I can hear you talking. Can you mute yourself? Okay, great, thank you. So here's some sample of some of the pictures that we took while we were meeting with various offices.
You know, this woman who's making the presentation really has some. I mean, she has a lot of experience. She seems very. If she has.
I'm sorry, I can hear you again. Could you mute
Peter,
yourself?
could you please not mute yourself, Peter?
No, that's okay. But
I'm so sorry, Rebecca.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks.
Maybe keep an eye on anyone there and ask them to, or just mute them, mute them for them. And here's pictures from the lunch and learn session as well. We had Congressman Donald Byer attend the session, which is a picture of him right here. And then finally, this was pictures from the press event where we had the sponsor of the bill, Congresswoman Deanna Tynes from Nevada. She was there, and there's a picture of her and a picture of me. Picture of me shaking her hand, you know, all that stuff in the front of the Capitol building. So it was good press coverage. So just to kind of like take a step back, I don't know how closely you guys follow what's been going on with Congress this year, but in terms of being able to raise awareness of American abroad tax issues, we are, I think, just to kind of put it in context, there's kind of two different things. I get a lot of people saying, why can't we pass residency-based taxation? It's so easy. Well, I mean, you look at Congress and how things are going right now. I mean, they're not really passing anything right now, if you haven't noticed. It's one of the most divisive Congresses that we've seen in a long time. everything seems to be passing in a partisan manner. Nothing is very bipartisan. It's very, very difficult to pass anything. So that's one thing. The other thing is that you look at a lot of the different kinds of areas that people might be lobbying or advocating on within Washington, D.C. In Congress. So you look at, pick any topic, abortion rights, gun rights, just pick any of them. None of them are moving right now. Like, it's you look at all of it is very, very difficult. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that there are only so many American Abroad organizations. So Democrats Abroad is the largest Americans Abroad organization. So we are we're well respected on the Hill in Washington, D.C. But that said, we're only a handful of various overseas organizations. So, I mean, I can count on one hand how many there are. Whereas you look at the other kind of groups, like there's a Coalition for Abortion Rights, which has over 500 organizations that are part of that coalition. So, in terms of manpower, we're really outnumbered. In terms of the number of people and organizations that are actually going to Washington, D.C. and speaking face to face. We don't live in D.C. Like, it's not like, recently people have been driving to D.C. to protest for lots of different things, including current wars and such. We don't have the option of jumping in the car and driving to DC to be visible to them. We're very invisible. We're out of sight, out of mind, because we're out of the country. So we have a lot of barriers that are preventing us from being able to get to what we want. But it's not impossible. I'd say one of the benefits of COVID, as probably a lot of you are aware, is that we've been able to do more congressional meetings via Zoom. But being able to meet face to face still makes a massive difference. So like when we went to DC in June, we were really highly visible. It really helped in terms of the grand scheme of things of moving forward with our advocacy asks. But there are a lot of things that are tied up. So I'm not going to go into detail. I've had this slide up, but this Congress has been incredibly dysfunctional, and there's not much hope for passing anything this year for anyone. And that is the unfortunate reality of how things are. But there are still things that can be done. So there are three main things, which is building that we focus on with Congress, which is building the Congressional Americans Abroad Caucus. And then we have two bills, which is the American Abroad Commission Bill and the American Abroad Simplified Filing Bill. So I'll just kind of go into a little bit more detail about those. This is a list of so the Congressional Americans Abroad Caucus is a caucus within the House. So anyone who is a House member can join the caucus. And it's mostly to keep in the loop on Americans Abroad issues. Dina Titus is the chair of the Americans Abroad Caucus. And this is the list of members that we have. So if you don't see your House rep's name on this list, you should definitely contact them and ask them to join the Americans Abroad Caucus. The more members we have on that caucus, the easier it is for us to pass legislation that will support Americans Abroad. And then we also have oh no, I have to do each one of these, sorry. So we also have the Commission on Americans Abroad bill, which basically would set up, it would be a 2-year commission where like 10 members of Congress would get together and focus on what are the issues that are Americans abroad facing? What are the kind of legislative changes that could be made in order to improve the lives of Americans abroad? That's basically what the commission would do. So We currently have 20 co-sponsors on the bill. This is more co-sponsors than we've ever had in any other Congress. This bill has been reintroduced over multiple Congresses in the past, but we're gaining more momentum because we've gotten more co-sponsors. So again, if you don't see your House Rep's name here, then I would really love it if you could contact your member of Congress and your House Rep in particular and ask them if they would sponsor the bill. And then secondly, lastly, we have the tax simplification for Americans Abroad bill, which basically, it does three things. The first thing that it does is it simplifies, it would basically create like a 1040 EZ form, for Americans Abroad and make it easier, less pages. It's one of the biggest complaints that I hear from people is that their tax return is like 6 inches thick or something like that. So it would reduce the number of pages that you file. And then the other thing is it would eliminate double taxation that happens on like foreign benefits or what are deemed foreign from the US perspective, but are local for us, non-US unemployment, and other areas of double taxation that happens on some of the most vulnerable Americans Abroad, on non-US disability payments, things like that that currently are deemed as taxable, unfortunately. And it's a complete oversight from Congress. They don't, the biggest issue that we face with a lot of the things on that, a lot of the problems that Americans Abroad face, is because when Congress drafted the legislation, they were not thinking about Americans abroad. So more often than not, what happens is that because we weren't thought about, retrospectively, unintended consequences occur. And so we have to go back to Congress and say, hey, you forgot about us. Can you go back and fix this? And so that's kind of where we're at with a lot of the issues, including the tax problems. And then the third part of this bill is combining the FBAR and the FATCA together and raising the filing threshold. I know I've gone over a lot. If anybody has any questions on that, I'm happy to clarify anything. I haven't looked at the chat box though, but okay, I don't see anything right now. Cool.
Could I ask a question? You said
sure.
Interrupt.
Yeah.
All of this taxation legislation passed, argued, not passed. Does any of it really affect people who are self-employed, subcontractors working for US companies? Because I think a lot of us know that a lot of us work online for US companies. And here we are scrambling in two directions, filing taxes in one country, paying taxes yet again in another country. That double taxation thing is just all over the place. Does any of the legislation, does all of it, does all of it include those who are self-employed? Do you know? Is that?
So, I mean, I think that the tax simplification bill would help. It wouldn't fix that particular instance where it's a US citizen residing abroad but having income from a US sourced employer.
Right.
To be honest, that situation isn't unique to Americans abroad. I mean, you would come across that issue like if you're from Australia and you live in Germany, but your employer is in Australia. So, I mean, those kind of cross-border issues come up for everybody, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that is different for Americans abroad is that not only do you have to pay and file tax in the country that you live in, but you also have to pay, or you are potentially liable for paying US tax, but you also have to file a US tax return. So that's where the onerous and like that's where it becomes onerous and it becomes complicated because it's very difficult for people to file their own tax return as an American abroad, which is why this bill is trying to address and simplify it, but it does not fix it for everyone, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, I just heard you mention something like potentially a 1040 EZ tax form, which,
Yeah.
wow, doesn't that sound delightful? But it probably doesn't apply to that particular sector of people.
It,
So
it's not written for that particular section of people. However, if you do not owe any US tax, then it would apply to you and you would be eligible to file that form.
okay, so as long as you have been paying your taxes yearly, then when you say, oh, I mean, as long as potentially, hypothetically, someone who has paid their taxes every year, filed every year, then you, in theory, going forward, could use this 1040 EZ form if it's
No, it doesn't matter what you've been doing in the past.
oh
It
okay.
would,
You
it
confused me.
would,
I'm sorry.
yeah, it would, if passed, would allow somebody who does not owe any US tax to use the 1040 EZ form to file.
Okay.
So that it makes it easier for you to file, given that you don't owe any US tax.
Whoopee. Okay, thank you
But
very much.
hopefully that helps clarify.
It does. It does. It actually does. Thank you. Thank you. I think I probably got a little long-winded there. Excuse
No,
me.
that's okay. That's fine. So, okay. So again, if you don't see your House rep's name on this list, please do ask them to co-sponsor on the bill. So I just wanted to highlight some of the press achievements that we've been able to get, where we've been able to get press coverage on American abroad tax issues here. I'm happy for these slides to be sent out to people afterwards, and also just some of the formal submissions that we've made to Congress as well. I wanted to highlight here something because I just ran, so I've been running tax webinars since 2017 when I first started volunteering for Democrats Abroad. And one of the things that I've really has been a foundation of some of my work for the organization has been helping educate people on the tax issues, because so many people come to Democrats Abroad, they email Democrats Abroad asking for a recommendation of an accountant to file their tax return for them. And I totally understand why they're asking, because people have not received education on how to file a tax return. The thing I always say in congressional meetings in particular, like it's not like when you move abroad, you get some kind of like an orientation from the State Department that says, okay, now that you're an American abroad, this is how to be an American abroad. You need to file your tax return every year. And this is how you register to vote. Like, you don't get anything. You get no education. You get nothing. So a majority of people living overseas, they go, they do whatever it is, and they live abroad for, a year, 2 years, 5, 10, 20, 50 years down the line. And then they're like, they hear from a friend that they should have been filing a tax return and they haven't been. And then they email us and they're like, I've been living abroad for 20 years and I just found out I was supposed to file a tax return and I haven't been. What do I do? And they freak out and they think the IRS is going to come after them and slap a big fine on them or throw them in jail or something like that. And that's not what happens. like it's a complete irrational fear, but I can understand why people have that fear, because the IRS has been made into a boogeyman in particular by the Republicans. But also the IRS has been demonized in a lot of different ways, to be made out as this really horrible government agency. Just to kind of put it in context, like, what is the Greek?
Rebecca, we've lost your audio. Can you hear me?
I can. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
I
Now
can
we can
hear
hear
you just fine.
Okay,
I can
maybe
hear
it
you.
cut out just for.
I
Sorry,
can hear
didn't see who that was. Okay. Um, um, what is the Greek equivalent of the IRS? What is it called? I don't even know.
Η εφορία. Εφορία,
Okay.
δεν ξέρω. Αυτό το λέμε, η εφορία.
Okay. Yeah.
Boy.
So I mean,
Oh boy.
is it made out to be as horrible as the IRS is
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Greece?
Yeah.
It is.
You know, I think people tend to, forget that it's like, yes, a country runs on the taxes of the people who live there. And,
Right.
taxes are not a bad thing. It's like we should pay, but people suddenly say, oh, the person asking for the taxes is the boogeyman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's the same here in Greece. It's
Okay.
the same.
Okay, that's good to know. But does it run efficiently, or is it as dysfunctional? Or maybe it's even more dysfunctional in Greece. I don't know. Don't know. But basically, like it should be very easy to file a tax return, right? Like people should be able to just say, I earned this, I owe this, and then they pay it. Like it shouldn't be complicated, but it is. Sarah Jane, you have a question?
Yeah. Oh, actually, I see on the screen that you've talked about your ID Me. I don't know if anyone online has any experience with it, but your webinar that I listened to with them about how to sign up, and that was excellent. I don't know if anyone here would like that information. That might be something really nice to share.
Yeah,
if we
yeah.
have that webinar.
Yeah, for sure. You can share it.
Link.
But great. Yes, please do share it.
I didn't know if they knew what ID.me was. Maybe some.
Yeah, ID.me is a third-party company that was nominated by the IRS, as well as other government agencies, to carry out identity verification so that you can set up your IRS account. You can also set up your online social security account through them. And it makes it easier to then access the information that the IRS has on file for you. Historically, the IRS has been very difficult to get a hold of because they don't take emails. You can't send them an email. You can't communicate. The only way you can communicate with the IRS is to pretty much call them or write them, although they do accept faxes, but I'm not aware of very many people sending faxes these days. And so the last year, the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, which gave the IRS an injection of funding of $80 billion. Now, a good chunk of that was taken away through bargaining earlier this year with the Republicans, but there's still a lot of money that is there, and it has already been spent on improving services within the IRS for taxpayers. And part of that I wanted to highlight has already helped Americans abroad through establishing the online IRS account, which allows you to sign up for an online IRS account from abroad. Previous to about 2 years ago, you had to, it was geo-blocked, so you could only sign up for it if you were inside of the US, and you had to have a US address. These days, you do not need a US address. You can sign up with a non-US address. You can sign up with a non-US phone number through ID.me. So that in and of itself was a huge step in the right direction. In addition to that, in the future, they're going to be expanding the services that are available in the account. So they literally just launched this month paperless correspondence. So you can, once you have your online IRS account set up, you can then receive and send correspondence within your account. You're never going to be able to send an email to the IRS. They're not going to do that. But what they are going to be able to do is allow you to send a message to them through the online account, and then they will respond to you there. So I think that is a huge, huge step of progress. In addition, in the future, by 2025, they're trying to eliminate paper filing so that you don't have to send your tax return by mail, and then it potentially gets lost in the mail, and then you don't know if it's ever received, they ever get it, because they don't send you confirmation that they received your return. So by 2025, all tax returns will they'll be processing them digitally through the online account. And then in the next 10 years, they will you will be able to make and receive payments to non-US bank accounts. At the moment, if you are due a refundable credit or a refund, you can only receive it through a US bank account or via US check, which is very difficult to figure out how to cash a US check while you're abroad. And also file directly online with the IRS. And it looks like there was no, there was not a question.
Well, I did have a question. Sorry to
okay.
get
Yeah,
in
go
there
ahead.
again. Oh heavens, now what was it? It had to do with the fact that I wanted to point out to people that if you didn't catch that and you tried to sign up for ID Me login like sometime back, and then it didn't work. You didn't have a US phone. It was like everything was just wrong. Now we should try again.
Yeah, try it again.
Thank you. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's I wanted to kind of clarify that for everyone because I almost missed it. And then I realized I don't have that because it was over 2 years ago that I tried to do it, threw up my hands and said, oh God, forget this. It's
Yeah.
not working. Okay. So I should try again. Thank you. All right.
Yep, 100%.
Just
Can I?
clarification there.
Does anybody hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we hear you.
Does anybody hear me? Am I? Yes. Oh, wonderful. My name is David. Nice to see you all, and thank you for this presentation. I have a question that may be specific to me, but others may share something like this. I've been in Greece for many, many years and hadn't filed taxes in the U.S. I did a couple years ago, and I haven't this year yet, so I'm a little bit delinquent on that. I've also been notified that I have a couple stimulus checks waiting for me there. Now, when I filed in the US, I used my mother's address. I don't know exactly what I was supposed to do. I didn't declare a Greek address to the IRS. I gave them my mother's address when filing. And I'm just kind of wondering how I should proceed next time I file. And the stimulus checks, are they still available to me if I file using a Greek address? Am I delinquent somehow? Are they going to say, no, you owe us? Because I did cash one of those, and I'm waiting to get the other two, for the COVID stimulus checks. So it sounds a little bit convoluted to me. I don't really know how to proceed.
Right. So like I don't know if you caught the beginning of the presentation, but we're
I
not
wasn't.
we're not going to be taking any personal questions, but I am happy to answer that in a general sense. If you have filed and you were expecting all three of this is a really common issue where people have received one or two of their stimulus checks, but they haven't received all three.
Right.
Basically, you need to call the IRS. That's the first thing.
Which I did. I did do that. Yeah.
Okay. And what did they say?
They said, when you file your taxes next time, just certain, on number 45, whatever it is, question or whatever, answer or include that amount and you'll receive it. But again, I didn't know if I should, write my mother's address again, or should I now say that I'm having my Greek address. I don't know what you do.
So it's
what
it's
any
up
of you
to
do in that case. Yeah.
It's up to you, but the address that you use with the IRS is your correspondence address. So they will send all letters to your mother's address in the US. I see. If you cannot receive mail there, or she can't send it on to you or take a picture of it and send it to you, then you should be using your Greek address.
Okay. And as a US citizen, I'm still eligible to collect that, right? Whether I
Yes.
live here or there. Okay. I'm sorry, I wasn't in the beginning of the meeting, so I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to ask those
Yes,
questions.
but you need to do it. The deadline for receiving the first 2 payments is if you give me 1 second, I can tell you it. Hold on, where is it? It's very soon.
Oh.
There it is. The deadline to claim the first 2 payments that went out in 2020 is May 17th next year.
Okay. Okay.
So you need to file your tax return next year before the 17th of May, or else you will not be eligible to claim those payments after.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay.
The deadline for the 3rd payment is April 15th, 2025.
Okay.
So if you miss those deadlines, then you will not, basically the way it works with the IRS in general is that they give you, this is how it works. If they owe you money, you have 3 years to claim it.
Mhm.
If you owe them money, they have, I forget, it's more years. It's like 7 years. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah, that's
so
the way
they can
those things
come
work.
after
Yeah.
you for more years,
Right.
whereas you can only go after them for 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
basically, the sooner you file, the sooner you'll get the money. So that's the best thing to do.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate
Yeah.
your answer. Thank you.
Okay, I'm almost done here, and then I think we'll go to a general Q&A. But I think Gina talked about the taxpayer advocacy panel a little bit at the beginning, but I just wanted to kind of emphasize here that the Federal Advisory Committee is something that is actually established by the government. It is actually under the Department of Treasury, and basically there is at least one volunteer representative from all 50 states plus DC, Puerto Rico, and one living abroad. So I am your representative for international taxpayers on the taxpayer advocacy panel. I am the only person out of there are roughly 75 members on the TAP committee. I'm the only one representing internationals, and it is a huge job. It is a huge responsibility. And some people said I was insane to accept it, in addition to being the chair of the Democrats Abroad Taxation Task Force. Honestly, I did not plan that. It just just happened. So, but I wanted to I was offered it a few months after I accepted the position within Democrats Abroad, and the people that support me and the work that we do in the Taxation Task Force were supportive and continue to help support. So I'm really glad I did, because it's really helped me better have a much deeper and better understanding of how the federal agencies interact with each other, what the IRS is in charge of versus what Treasury is in charge of versus what Congress is in charge of. The remit of each of these agencies, and also the roles that they play with Congress, is really incredibly important in terms of putting forward the right asks to the right people. And so basically what TAP does is we come up with ideas, we listen to the public for recommendations to improve customer service and communication with the IRS. So just to kind of like, there's the website. So if anybody here has ideas for improving the IRS, you can go to improve.irs.org and submit a comment for a recommendation, and we might take it up, you know. Oh no, I thought I had another slide here that went into more detail about it, but basically here, I do have it on here. Where is it? Ah, there it is. Sorry about that. So I'm the way it works on TAP is each person serves a 3-year term. So I'm currently in I've just completed my second year. Next year will be my third and final year on TAP. Some of the issues that I've worked on have included asking for the IRS to offer callback features so people don't have to be on hold forever and like burn international calling minutes that are very expensive, as well as challenging them on defining the definition of a foreign pension. I say foreign, which is a local pension for many people who have had income and pensions overseas. And my two biggest achievements this year, which just went to the IRS, was requesting that they reopen the tax attaches, which were there were 15 tax attaches at embassies all over the world, where people could go into the embassy and get face-to-face one-to-one support on filing their tax return. Those were closed in 2015 due to funding being pulled, but with the Inflation Reduction Act funding being injected into the IRS, this was an opportune moment for me to request that they reopen the tax attaches. So that was approved and submitted. I'm very excited to see what the IRS says about that, and also asking the IRS to help with funding and providing VITA TCE and LITC funding for Americans abroad. I'll just quickly go through what these programs are. These are government funded programs where if you are either low income or elderly, or you are low income and having a tax legal problem, you can get free support. Currently, these programs are not available to Americans abroad. So this is just another layer of discrimination that Americans abroad face based on where we live. If you were in the United States, you could go and walk into a taxpayer assistance center and get face-to-face support, book an appointment in order to help you file your tax return. It doesn't exist for Americans abroad. So these are the main things I've been working on with TAP this year. In addition, I've been working on establishing a relationship with the Taxpayer Advocate Service. So I skipped the slide, but basically the Taxpayer Advocate Service is if you are having a problem with the IRS, like you received a letter and they say that you owe tax that you know you don't owe, or you owe a penalty, or you're having some kind of customer service issue and you just haven't been able to get it resolved. Basically, the Taxpayer Advocate Service can open up a case on your behalf and liaise with the IRS directly to help you resolve the issue. What the Taxpayer Advocate Service does is they have face-to-face problem-solving days where they go into the community and help people resolve these issues. This year, I hosted 2 online virtual ones for international taxpayers. It's the first time they'd ever done that. I am going to be hosting 6 more of these in 2024. So all of you, it's free. It's totally free. You get put into a breakout room on Zoom so that you're only with a case advocate. You get to talk to them confidentially about your tax issue, and then they help you resolve it. So if you're on the Taxation Task Force mailing list, you'll be emailed when the dates for those are announced next year. And so I'm also going to be hosting some events next year to encourage more people to apply to be my successor, because succession planning is really important, because it's a very important role for Americans abroad. For the international member of the Taxpayer Advocacy Panel is a really critical role for advocating on behalf of Americans abroad in our most vulnerable state, which is in our tax issues. So yeah, I think that's it. That took a little longer, but hopefully that was informative. I'm very happy to just kind of chat to you guys and take any questions or anything else, but I hope that was helpful and educational. Yeah.
Well, I found it
Can I ask a
very, very
question?
helpful.
Oh, sorry.
It was,
Go ahead.
it was great. I learned so much. I didn't expect to learn this much tonight from you, and I really appreciate it. And I'm going to follow up on some of your comments and some of your contacts too.
Great.
Thanks.
Rebecca, I didn't have any idea that anyone was advocating for us. I have felt so frustrated for the last almost 30 years because I've been here that long with my tax situation and fighting and struggling and trying to always do the right thing. Like many people, I would say the first 7, 8, 9 years, I didn't know I was supposed to pay taxes. I think it was like
Yeah.
David. There I was. I thought, well, zero income, zero taxes. I mean, what am I going to file? I didn't know. And then somebody flipped the switch in my head and I thought, oh my God, I'm now delinquent without even having any income. So I went through the process of re-entering the system, and it was a good thing. Because let's face it, when we file US taxes, if we have income that we should file, what we are doing is we are increasing our Social Security benefits. This benefits us ultimately. So this is a good thing. It's a good thing to file our US taxes and pay our US taxes. Especially if we're not paying a lot where we are and don't expect to get a lot of benefits where we currently are, which I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know, David, where you are, where you're located.
You're on mute.
Yeah, can't hear you.
Sorry. Hello. Okay, I'm back. Okay, I'm in Athens, Greece.
Oh, okay. So you're in Greece as well. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So you're another one who's here in Greece.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll turn it
Yeah.
back over to Rebecca.
Yeah, I would just say to that like if you are filing a tax return, you are actually, as an American abroad, you are in the minority. Like if you take the million estimate of Americans living abroad, there were 1.4 million who filed from abroad in 2020.
Okay.
So,
Can I be honest about it and say that the reason I am filing and paying US taxes is because I, quite frankly, have more faith in the US system to support me ultimately, because hey, we're not getting any younger, and someone is going to have to help support me in my old age. And I'm looking at my Social Security and saying, if I don't contribute to it at this point, I will not have anything to speak of. So we file, we pay our taxes so that we can then, as citizens, take back from the system, which is what I am now. I'm doing that. But
okay. I guess I'm a little confused because as a resident abroad, you don't normally pay into Social Security. You normally pay into the equivalent, whatever the equivalent is in Greece as a Greek resident. So
but I'm basically not, because here in Greece, I'm okay.
I don't know. So I don't know about
yeah, right.
the
And the details
I don't know about the
matter.
tax treaty with Greece. I also don't know about the there would be a Social Security agreement with Greece between the US and Greece. So you
There
might
is
option
indeed
to pay into the US security.
But I actually, yeah, I
don't
actually
know.
hired a consultant, an accountant, and went through the whole thing. And I have settled where I have settled. Each person individually will do what they feel is correct for them.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not advocating or advising for anything for
Sure.
anyone.
Yeah.
But that is a fact. That is a fact that you're paying taxes there. You are contributing towards your Social Security eventually. I mean,
Yes.
that is the
Yes,
case.
because I am an American citizen, and
Right.
what I pay into the American tax system then eventually, hypothetically, comes back to me in, unfortunately,
Yeah.
some years when I reach retirement age. So
Sure.
this is something I am concerned about, and something everyone should consider is where they are going to be receiving, how. And as Rebecca pointed out, there is a joint agreement, and those things can combine.
So
Well,
do you work for an American company or something, or are you
Yes, I
paid from the
do.
US?
We don't want to
Okay,
hear all
so
this.
Yeah.
that's the difference. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
I
turn
again,
it
I
back
don't,
over to Rebecca.
yeah, again, I don't know how it works in Greece, in terms of the Social Security or the tax treaties. But the way it normally works is if you are resident in Greece, you pay, it doesn't matter where your income came from, you pay tax in Greece first, and then you file your US tax return. And most people do not owe any US tax, even
Right.
if your income is US source.
Uh-huh.
So that's how, if you look at the IRS statistics, again, 60% of people who file from abroad do not owe any US tax.
Rebecca, you have
Can I
just
ask-
told
oh,
me
sorry.
something very new. I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt here because
Yeah.
I just heard something that shocked and surprised me. Rebecca, you've given me new information. I was not aware of this. Now it's something I'm going to look into. If I pay taxes on my American income here in Greece, then I can declare those as taxes paid, and I do not pay them in the US?
That is how it works for most people. Yes.
Okay.
You
Okay,
really-
mind blower, big
unless
thing.
unless there is unless
I'm
there
not
is an
gonna
income
listen.
source which is double taxed, which
Yeah.
if you're earning income in the US, that's income. So you pay tax in your country of residence first. Doesn't matter where the money came from, Greece, US, wherever, you pay tax on it in Greece first. And then you file a US tax return. And most people will say that they've already paid tax in their country of residence, and then they don't owe US tax. So you basically have to file to prove that you owe no US tax because you've already paid tax in your country of residence.
Okay,
That's how it
thank
normally
you.
works. However, again, I am not an accountant.
I know, but you've given me something to look
into.
into. You
Right.
gave me something to explore, to look into. I'm not taking you as a tax accountant, but I'm
Right.
saying you've given me something to
Right.
now explore and say, wow, I didn't look at it this way. Maybe I misinterpreted the whole situation all these years, trying to do the right thing. Maybe I've done the wrong thing.
Well, if
Thank
you
you.
had, in theory, if you paid somebody as an advisor and professional, they should have advised you correctly.
One would think.
Yeah, I know where you're coming. I get it.
Come on, let's
I
not
know.
hear her.
Can I ask something about FATCA? If you could talk a bit more about FATCA.
Yeah. What do you want to know about FATCA?
You mentioned that rather than eliminate it altogether, I think you said something about making the threshold
What's his name? Oh,
higher.
shit.
Is that what you? Is
So
that what exactly is are you advocating or is trying to be done as far as
Right.
FATCA is concerned? That's
the
really, I guess.
legislation that
Yeah,
the legislation that we have, that we currently have is the third part of the Tax Simplification for Americans Abroad Act, which will combine the FBAR and FATCA forms together. And at the moment, it's very confusing for people. So you think that there's not a lot of people that are filing from abroad. There's even less people who are filing the FBAR which has a filing threshold of $10,000 in aggregate in any non-US accounts.
But when I
So
say FATCA, sorry, I think I meant FBAR, sorry. In other words,
I'm going to talk about
filing
both.
when you, having over $10,000.
I'm going to talk about both. So,
okay,
because they're
thanks.
connected.
Right.
So it's not a tax, it's a reporting requirement.
Right.
Both FBAR, and if currently, if you have over it's either $200,000 or $250,000 in a non-US bank account, you have to file the FATCA form, which is the 8938 form. If you have in aggregate over $10,000 in any non-US bank accounts, you have to file the FBAR form, which does not go to the IRS, it goes to the Financial Crimes Network. There's obviously duplicative reporting here, especially if you hit the 200,000 threshold. You're not only filing to the IRS with that form, but you're also filing the FBAR form, which goes to the Financial Crimes Network. And it's very confusing. Why do people have to file two forms with the same information? It doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, historically, it made sense because the FBAR is for going after like people for money laundering, and FATCA is about going after people who are evading taxes. So the reporting requirements are in place in order to catch out money laundering or tax evasion. So that's why those exist. However, it's a lot of reporting and it's very confusing. So we're advocating to combine those two forms and increase the filing threshold so that it's a lot less confusing. So people don't have to file separately with the Financial Crimes Network. They just file the form if they have over 200,000 or so with their annual tax return. So it's a lot easier that way. But
If I could
you
cut
asked
in here
about
for
FATCA.
just a second, is that why are our banks here in Greece constantly, I mean, every year I have to go into the bank and like fill
Why do
out
we have
all
to-
these forms and declarations
You-
Right.
based on FACTA. And
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I'm way, way, way below that threshold. And yet this is a yearly thing. Is that standard? Is that they're just trying to ascertain that we're below that threshold?
No. So with FATCA, there is a reporting requirement on the bank side as well as on the individual side.
Okay.
So with the banks, I don't the way that it's been implemented at different banks has been very confusing because they all have interpreted the rules in different ways. So I've heard so many different variations of different this is the first time I'm hearing that you need to recertify on FATCA with your bank every year. I've never heard of that before.
Our banks,
so
you cannot
different.
believe. My local banks, they don't even know what they want from me.
Yeah.
I go in there and they ask me for everything. I mean, everything from my mother's maiden name to, I mean, what I made, you know, I mean, my last 5 years of bank statements, they don't know what to ask for. This is a major, major problem. And maybe it's something that maybe needs to be addressed, is that foreign banks actually don't understand FACTA.
Yeah.
They don't understand what they are supposed to be asking for. They ask me for things I can't even give them. And I tell them, that's impossible. I don't have that to give you. And they say, but it looks like that's what they're asking for. And I say, well, no, they're not, because that's impossible. And it is literally impossible to communicate with them. So this may be one of those issues that needs to come up? I'm not sure.
That's a
if
great
it's-
point, Jennifer. I'm going to interrupt you just for a second.
Okay,
to
thank you.
ask
Thank
Rebecca.
you.
No
Please
problem.
do.
Thank you for bringing that up. Rebecca, earlier you mentioned the problems we're having with our current Congress, and the chances of getting anything done, even if it's brought up, are, well, not very rosy. So I guess that brings me to my question is, how do you see that if we're able to get a Democrat-controlled Congress in 2024, which is, of course, my main goal in life, is a blue wave in 24. Do you think that these things will be more receptive if we have more Democrats, and if the Democrats are controlling the House and the Senate and the presidency? Do you think they'll be more receptive to changing these things and getting, fruits of your amazing labor? So we're seeing that.
More receptive? No. Easier to make it happen? Yes, because there will be less division within Congress. And if the Democrats are in charge, a lot of these bills have been Democrat led anyway. If the Democrats are in charge in both the House and the Senate, it will make it easier to pass the bills. But you need to remember that between 2020 and 2022, we did have both the House and the Senate, but these bills didn't pass. And again, it's because there is so many different competing priorities in Congress, and we are a very small voice. We need more people like all of you to contact your members of Congress and ask them to co-sponsor on these bills, because they don't even know these bills exist until their constituents ask them to co-sponsor on bills. There's so many bills that are introduced into Congress every year. So the more that you guys contact and have your voices be heard, the easier it makes my job. I'm doing congressional Zoom calls on a regular basis. I'm raising awareness of these issues, but one of the biggest barriers that we face is a lack of awareness of these problems. It has certainly gotten a lot of traction. In the last 2 years, because I've been chairing the Taxation Task Force, and I've been leading on our congressional outreach. So I have a much better sense of who knows what and what the barriers are. But it is, it's not like it will sail through. I think, we still haven't even passed the ERA, right? Like, we haven't even passed the friggin' ERA. So there are a lot of different barriers, but it will certainly make things easier. That's for sure. But
of course, if all of us get busy and contact our Congress people, and we'll be sharing those links. I think Sarah Jane has shared the link already in the chat already. And we'll be doing a follow-up report, just a second, Jennifer, in our newsletter and in emails. So please, everybody who's here, and share that information also with other U.S. citizens abroad, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, because this is what I see as a really bipartisan issue. Because and so I'm surprised that there aren't any GOP sponsors, or at least I didn't see any on these bills.
There was one on the commission bill, but we definitely need more Republicans on both the bills for sure.
Okay, thank you. I think Sarah
Regarding
Jane had a
what
question.
Gina said, I wanted to just kind of make sure that someone is going to actually give me the specific information, because I'm old fashioned. I write notes with pen and paper. And what I have is contact, your representative to co-sponsor bill. And then I have a blank. And it's
Don't worry, Jennifer, we'll get that to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, please.
Actually,
Please,
Jennifer,
it's like I have this gap there, and it's like, okay, the
I,
bill. What bill? I want to be active.
Okay, you
but
know what?
have
I'm
to
going to
help
share
me.
my screen. So look, if you go to the Taxation Task Force website, can y'all all see this? There is actually a whole page on contacting Congress, and it walks you through. This is somebody who will this page tells you exactly what to do. So you can click on any one of these, ask your rep to co-sponsor the American Abroad Simplified Filing Bill, ask your House rep to join the Americans Abroad Caucus, This is a roadmap for you to act.
Thank you.
Okay, the link
Question
is in the chat.
answered.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Thanks, Sarah Jane. I'm
Well
glad
done.
your question was
Thank you.
answered. Sarah Jane, did you have a question as well, or were you wanting to share?
No, I wanted to just bring up those links so people could see how it really is spelled out for them. But
Thank
I
you.
also would have commented on the Greek situation. Yes, I have a safety deposit box. And in order to visit it once a year, they literally will not even allow me unless I produce my US tax return. And that's because I believe the Greek banks have an agreement with the US banks. I mean, it's very, very strict.
Well,
Well, we could all tell
Yeah.
nightmare stories about our going to our Greek banks. David, good luck getting those COVID checks cashed. I spent 3 hours at my bank in Muris here on Crete, and at the end, the guy said, "Are you expecting more checks from the United States?" Sort of like, "Oh, please don't come to me or
Yeah,
choose a day
right.
when I'm not here." So be ready.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I would if when you do file your tax return next year, and David, since you're owed those stimulus checks, do you have a US bank account?
Yes, I do.
Please put your US bank
Photograph it,
account
send
details
it.
on it.
Okay,
If you
I will.
don't, they will send you a check. If you
Okay.
do, they will just pay you the money into your US bank account.
Okay,
That
that's
is
what I'll do. That's what I'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
save
can
yourself the
literally
hassle.
photograph it with your phone and then send it to your bank, and that's
Right.
it.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah, but you don't want to hassle with them sending you the check to Greece and then having to like
No.
Yeah, but if
Right,
it
right, right.
happens, because it happened to me, that's what happened to me. It's like the check showed up literally at my house, and it's like, oh my God, a check from Donald Trump.
Yeah, right.
It's like, oh God, and I
Oh.
take a picture of it and I send it to my bank. And that's how I got it deposited. Because literally the first one, it came in the mail to my house here in Greece.
Yeah.
So if
Okay.
that happens, photograph it and send the photograph. Done.
Well,
Maybe we need to have another
can only-
Kafeneion on Greek banking systems, but
That's way too funny. Don't
you
even
can
go
only really
there.
do that if your US bank has an app that allows you to take a picture and deposit it that way. Not everybody has that option, but there is a link. I'll find it. I wrote a blog post when the COVID checks started happening in 2020, like we got so many emails of people saying, how do I cash a check abroad? So I wrote a blog post, and it's still one of the most visited
Sites.
blog posts on the Democrats Abroad website, actually. Here it is. I'll just put it in the chat box here. But if you do happen to get a US check mailed to you, you can use that link, and hopefully that will, there are a few different options. But if you don't have a US bank account, I found that you can set up a free PayPal account and take a picture of the check and deposit it that way too.
Mhm.
So a lot of people don't realize that.
And there are a lot of other options rather than PayPal, just so everybody out there knows that.
Right,
Do
right.
your research, and PayPal is not your only option.
But a lot of people were paying to open a US bank account in order to deposit it, and that I don't want people to be having to spend some of their COVID money in order to cash it. It just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So
I just
anyway,
thought
there's the link in the chat box, and there are multiple different options for people. I see Sarah Jane has her hand up.
Yeah, I mean, just because it might be useful, can I also highlight another shared screen about all the upcoming webinars with regard to this?
Oh, yes,
tax
please.
issues. So, learning to go to the Democrats Abroad website is something you should all try and do. How to navigate it. There's a way to search. You can just put in taxation and it should come up. So this is the Taxation Task Force site, and look at all of these webinars.
So just to clarify, that actually you guys are more than welcome to come to the Social Security for Americans Abroad one. It is specifically for Americans abroad in the UK and Africa, but they will be going over general principles of who is entitled to what benefits. It's just that the information they're going to go through in terms of claiming the benefit will be specific to people in the UK and Africa.
Okay.
Don't ask me why. The UK embassy covers Africa as well. That's why it's UK and Africa. It's just randomly that way, but you're welcome to come. It's a free webinar. All of these other ones are recordings from webinars that we hosted earlier in the year that are helpful for people generally. We're actually going to be running our tax webinar series in January next year. So we'll be hosting another round of very helpful tax education webinars. So if you sign up for the Taxation Task Force mailing list, you'll be emailed when those webinars are announced. But thanks for sharing that, Sherry Jane. That's great.
Alexandra,
well, like everybody just wants more and more information, so they can watch those recordings at their leisure.
Yeah, definitely.
Excuse me, Alexandra, if you can hear me, I saw your hand like up a long time ago. Did you have a question you wanted to ask?
No, it may have been by accident. Sorry.
Okay, I just didn't want you to feel like nobody noticed you.
No. Okay. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome. Anybody else have any questions for Rebecca? Or anything else that you'd like to bring up at this point? Because if not, I'm going to just thank you from the bottom of my heart, Rebecca, for sharing so much with us and just your amazing work. I don't know how you do it. I'm so impressed with just your energy and your knowledge and expertise, and just thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah Jane, who's joining us from Texas, where she's gone back to the States for Thanksgiving. And for my part, I also want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, no matter how you're celebrating or not. And Rebecca, come visit us in Greece. We'll take you to a Greek bank.
I'd love maybe not. I'd love to come to Greece. It's one of the few European countries I haven't been to. So
okay, let's skip the bank. Let's take her to a chipuradico.
Yeah,
it's much nicer. Let's
What's
just
that?
all go to a chipuradico. We can have a nice time. Okay.
We'll work on getting.
No, I'll drag you to the Acropolis. You can't escape.
Okay, and that's good too. You gotta go there too. Yeah.
In the winter.
Now, both. First the Acropolis, then the chipuradico.
There you go.
Okay. Well,
thank you, Rebecca. Thank you very much.
Rebecca, thank you so much, really. And thank all the board members who have, I call them board members, all of the executive committee who help us put all of these together.
Thank you.
Before we leave, I do want to share this with you. If anybody needs help to get their ballot, to register, to vote, you or anyone you know, we will be having another DAGR Kafeneion on Wednesday, January 17. And we will be walking you through with the lead communications person from Vote From Abroad, Linda Addison, along with our own counsel and GOTV, Charity Moskopoulos, who is with us now, to help you. So you will get word of this by email, DAGR newsletter, through the Facebook pages. So don't despair, and make sure that you help us get out the vote this year. Yeah.
We're just closing down right now.
Charity, is there anything you'd like to add? You're our GOTV chair? No?
Oh, I think it was all well said.
Okay, Charity does have a team of people that are calling our members every year to help them to make sure they're still on our rolls, make sure none of their information has changed. So you'll be hearing from her, one of her volunteers, over the next weeks too. Great. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Okay.
We will get the recording up and distributed for anybody All of the links, if you missed them, just go to democratsabroad.org and slowly, methodically work yourself across that platform, and you will find all the information there. Brady, our chair, would you like to say a closing goodbye?
Well, Rebecca, we're honored and flattered that you agreed to join us. Your work is extremely important to our ability to explain why Democrats Abroad is necessary. And getting out the vote is great, but we have to be able to say, we have people who actually know what they're doing, who are working in Washington to make things happen. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And we will, the fact that you have spoken to us will resonate through a lot more people than were actually here this evening. And anyway, be aware that your message is going out, and we will keep your light shining as best we can in darkest Greece and everywhere else. So thank you again.
Oh,
thank you.
heavens. Greece is not dark. That's why we live here. We love it.